Mr. President, last week on the floor, I thanked 5 of my colleagues in the Senate who will be leaving at the end of this Congress. Today, I'd like to thank 3 more. If you read any profile on Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, there's a good chance you will see the word rumpled in that description of his presentation before the Senate. A rumpled suit has become his trademark. In fact, George Will once wrote that Sherrod, quote, radiates rumpledness even in a well-pressed suit. Such characterizations have never seemed to bother Sherrod because, you see, he didn't come here to be a clothes horse or pose for DQ. He wouldn't know what to do with a custom-made, clean-pressed suit every day at work. Sherrod Brown has spent 50 years in public office, 50, including the last 18 years in the Senate. He's the kind of person who comes to the Senate ready to fight for people who don't have lawyers and lobbyists to speak for him. Sherrod grew up in Mansfield, Ohio, a town hit hard and early by the decline in American manufacturing. His family was comfortably middle class, but many of his friends and seatmates in school weren't so lucky. When a factory in the town closed, his friend's family struggled and worried. Sherrod has spent his life trying to make those families and others like them in a position to get a fair shake. It's a noble kind of service to feel the burdens of others and to work to ease their load, even when you don't need help yourself. Sherrod's solidarity with others who needed help was evident when, for years, he even refused to take congressional health benefits until we passed the Affordable Care Act, which made them available to almost every American. He didn't think it was right to accept that benefit as long as tens of millions of Americans were unable to obtain quality, affordable health care. Sherrod has spent his life working for an economy and a government that cares about the working class and invests in towns, factories, health care, and the potential of working families. He's fought for fair trade deals and opposed trade agreements that he thought shortchanged American workers, even when his opposition put him at odds with the president of his own party. He insisted that the historic bipartisan infrastructure bill include a Buy America requirement, and he helped save the pensions of 1.5 million union members and retirees, the so-called Butch-Lewis Act, which I was proud to join him on. Today, 2 huge new Intel computer chip factories are being built in Ohio and New Albany, because Sherrod Brown helped pass the CHIPS and Science Act. As a longtime member and since 2021 chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, he's worked to prevent the kinds of Wall Street recklessness and greed that crashed the global economy in 2008. He's fought for affordable housing and consumer protection and against predatory lending and exorbitant junk fees. He's worked to hold executives of failed banks accountable and to make sure that AI and technology advances help consumers and aren't misused to rig the system in favor of the wealthy. He worked so hard and was so gratified by the child tax credit. I think it was one of his proudest achievements, and he said as much. In 2002 in the House, he voted against the Iraq War. I did too in the Senate. There weren't many of us at the time, and it wasn't a popular stand, but it was the right thing to do, and Sherrod knew it. I'm going to miss his gravelly Tom Waits voice in this chamber. I'm going to miss the many stories he brought back about his wonderful wife, Connie. She is a great writer and been recognized beyond the United States in many places around the world for her insight in her writing. I wish the best to both of them. Their work here, it may be finished for the time being, but they've left a positive mark on America. Mr. President, the big man from Big Sky Country, John Tester. Before his election to the Senate 18 years ago, Senator John Tester had never lived more than 2 hours away from his family's wheat farm in the town of Big Sandy, Montana, the same farm his grandparents homesteaded more than a century ago. John started his campaign for the U.S. Senate traveling across the state on a farm tractor trailer. And with his 7 fingers, Roger Maris flat top, and scuffed size 12 cowboy boots, he's cut a singular figure in the halls of Congress. He's a prairie pragmatist and a defender of programs that many rural Americans depend upon, such as market fairness for family cattle ranchers and rural community development efforts. John voted for the Affordable Care Act because it was right and because it's a lifeline to rural hospitals, to farmers, ranchers, small business owners who need affordable, accessible health care coverage. He's been a strong voice for Native Americans. Growing up, John played taps at the funerals of World War II veterans. It taught him at an early age that many veterans continue to pay a price for their service for the rest of their lives. When he gave his speech on the floor of the Senate just a day or two ago, he pointed to that moment in the funeral service for former Senator Dan Inouye, a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, where in Hawaii, John was called on to play taps for Senator Inouye. He said it was one of his proudest moments, and I'm sure that's true. When I think of the giants of the Senate, like Dan Inouye, I think about those like John Tester, who in his own way showed courage time and again. As chair of the Senate Veterans Committee, John Tester has worked to strengthen VA health care and protect disability benefits for all veterans. He pushed this Senate to pass the historic PACT Act to provide health care for veterans who were sickened by exposure to burn pits and other toxins and the survivor benefits for their spouses and young children. As of last week, the VA has approved more than 1.3 million claims under the PACT Act, including more than 51,000 veterans in my state of Illinois. By the way, lately we've been hearing about self-professed efficiency experts combing through the federal budget. Some of them have even called for the elimination of the Veterans Health Administration. They're wrong. They should listen to John Tester, a patriotic whom it's been an honor to work with and count as a friend. And you can't close with John without mentioning Shar. His wife, Shar, has been his partner in life and in politics in every step they've taken together. It's a wonderful, loving, caring, inspiring couple. I'm going to miss their physical presence, but their memories will live on in the Senate. Mr. President, it was the evening of January 28, 2017, the early days of the first Trump administration. Airports in Chicago and throughout the nation were filled with people protesting the administration's early ban on travelers from majority Muslim nations. Among more than 100 protesters at the Philadelphia International Airport, one man stood out. Dressed in a tuxedo and tails, he had just attended a black tie function when he heard about President Trump's decision. That man was Senator Bob Casey. He went directly to the airport. As we all know, Senator Casey isn't usually so flashy as to wear a tux, but his principle guided him in everything he does. Bob Casey is one of the most decent people I've ever served in Congress with. He is a bridge builder. He is committed to creating dialogue and finding common ground. He is the only Pennsylvania Democrat ever to serve 3 terms in the U.S. Senate. He's been a strong voice for working families struggling to get by. He has a great family himself with Therese. Poor mothers and children, coal miners at risk, and others had finally an advocate here standing up for them in the United States Senate. As chair of the Senate Special Committee on Aging, he has protected Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He helped lower seniors' costs for prescription drugs, a promise that was made years ago and finally kept thanks to Bob Casey. He's targeted scam artists who prey on seniors. Bob's father was a popular 2-term Pennsylvania governor, and while Robert Casey Sr. may have embedded the Casey name in Pennsylvania political life, Robert Casey Jr., through his decades of service, has added new honor to that name. Finally, I want to say thank you to a departing senator from across the aisle. On the evening of January 6, 2021, many senators in both political parties denounced the violent assault on this Capitol. But I believe history will record that the truest, bravest words spoken that night were from Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. He said, and I quote, "In light of today's sad circumstances, I ask my colleagues, do we weigh our own political fortunes more heavily than we weigh the strength of our republic, the strength of our democracy, and the cause of freedom?" Senator Mitt Romney is a man of deep faith and considerable accomplishments, a successful businessman, the rescuer of the 2002 Olympics, a Republican governor in a deep blue state, and his party's nominee for president in 2012. After he'd been here a few months, I went up to him on the floor and I said, the more I get to know you, Mitt Romney, the more I wonder why I said all those things about you in that presidential campaign. He laughed, and I did too. He's a conservative, but he's a man of conscience and character. We would all do well to ponder his question and emulate his courage. I'll miss Senators Brown, Tester, Casey, and Romney, and our other departing colleagues, and I join a grateful nation in thanking them for all that they've given, sacrificed, and contributed to us. Mr. President, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.